everybody. This is WRAL's Hidden Historian, Heather Leah, and I'm out here today exploring a really cool ruin. In fact, it's got to be several acres of ruins out here. This was Brunswick Town, and if you haven't heard of it, it's because it actually burned down in the 1700s. Now, it is pretty rare to find something from the 1700s still standing. In North Carolina, a lot of that stuff has been built over, developed, burned down, destroyed in some way. Hurricanes would have hit things, fires, wars. So even having these ruins out here, which are over 250 years old, these things were built prior to the founding of North Carolina itself. We wouldn't have been considered the United States of America just yet. That's how old these ruins are behind me. And in fact, a lot of the town's ruins are still here. If you walk through, you can actually find ruins of old houses and shops and foundations. I mean, there's just tons of abandoned ruins out here, and it's become a historic site. So I will say it's no longer abandoned, but for many years, for many decades, this area was just an abandoned town. So we're going to take a look at the church. There's a church, there's a fort, there's actually, Fort Anderson is out here, which is basically earthen mound breastworks that go around. Raleigh actually had breastworks and earthworks that went around Raleigh as well, so you can see them out here more what they should have looked like. But anyway, let's not hold off any longer. I really want to show you this. This is St. Philip's Anglican Church, or what's left of it. And it was burned down, like many places here in Brunswick Town. Now, we are very close to the coast. We're really close to Wilmington, Carolina Beach, and we're on the river. There's an old cemetery out here, and in fact, one of these graves has a curse written on it, which we will look at in a little while. But I want to show you inside this church. So, this is St. Philip's Anglican Church. People started to build it in the mid-early 1700s. For this to have survived this long is absolutely amazing. Now, normally I have an article to point you to, and there will be a hidden history article that's going to explain a lot more of the history and show old photos of how this place used to look, or at least how they think it used to look. So there will be a story. It will likely come out tonight or tomorrow because I had to travel to do this piece. But I wanted to go ahead and do the live stream so you could see. I mean, what's amazing about what's left of this church is this was burned down. It's been hit by a tornado. It's been hit by hurricanes. And it's still here, older than most things still standing in North Carolina. To put it in perspective, you're going to find a lot of the older stuff close to the coast because that's where the colonists would have first come in and landed and started to build. Places like Raleigh or Hillsborough, they wouldn't have been developed till a little bit later. Now, he showed me, the site director here showed me a few interesting things about this church. Oop. I see an animal. Is it a cat? A skunk? I'm not going to go close to it, but I wanted to show you. Look, there's a skunk out here. There is a lot of wildlife out here. I'm pretty sure that's a skunk. I'm not going to go close to it. So that's another thing. There's a lot of wildlife out here, and this town, for decades, it would have been abandoned. So this is Brunswick Town. It is close to Wilmington. So this is St. Philip's Church, and to give a perspective, this is what it would have looked like. So you can see the 3 windows, the arching window. There it is. I don't think it's a squirrel, it's black with a little white stripe. It's hard to see it on the camera. So, and then you can see like the seating in here. I have seen them decorate this for weddings, and it actually still looks like a church when they do that. We've got a list of ministers who served here. Here you can see 1728 is when they first had a minister, so that is how old this place is. Oh, this is important too. There are actually 12 graves buried in the church. Most of them concentrated near the altar, and important people were buried here as a sign of their status. And this was a floor plan. So when you walk inside, and this is not the only ruin out here, this is kind of the most striking visual, but there's actually, if you walk down the pathway, there's homes, there's like shops, shopping centers, basically, that the colonial version of a shopping center. So those things are still standing around here too, as well as an entire fort. So there's really a ton of history still here. And then of course the trees, you've got the trees with the Spanish moss. There's even a tree here, which it's a little closer to the fort, but they think that it was a witness tree, which means it would have been around during a major historic event, such as the Civil War. And that tree is huge. You can see that that tree has to be hundreds of years old. So, okay, they set a marker for me. This is where the royal governor was buried of the time. So they marked where his grave is. So if you can imagine right now, obviously the floor of the church is just grass. And the ceiling is just our partly cloudy sky, or mostly cloudy maybe. And yet underneath here we have graves. And I did ask him, how did you get a grave in a church? If there was floorboards and pews, how would you bury someone? And they would actually pull up the floorboards to bury them, and then bury them there, and then put the floorboards back down. In patching certain areas with concrete, shapes actually started to form, and so this is a little funny Easter egg. Obviously, you can see this one looks a lot like North Carolina. This is newer, this isn't older. This is one of the newer patch jobs that's been done throughout the decades. This became a historic site, I believe, in the 1950s. So it's been protected for a while, but before that, this was kind of abandoned wilderness with a ghost town, which is essentially what Brunswick Town has become. It's a ghost town. So we are in Brunswick Town, we're near the coast. And this is St. Philip's Anglican Church. You can still see through the windows today. Gotta watch where you step for fire ants. Now they told me that there's other little hidden Easter eggs up here. You can see a little goldfish up there, and I believe like maybe a dolphin. So there's a few little hidden shapes. Oh, and on that note, let me show you some carvings. So please don't do this. Let me just start by saying that. Do not come and do this. But this is a site you can visit. In fact, it's open, I believe, from 9 to 5. I do know it closes at 5. And it's just an open site. You can come for free and walk around, and there's a ton to see here. Like I said, there will be a full story about this on the website. Most likely tomorrow is when you'll see it. They are very thick. I mean, they look like they might be about 3 feet thick. They are very, very thick, which is how they've survived so long. Okay, so I noticed and commented that there are jerks who came and carved in this historic wall. And this is obviously not something you should ever do. However, sometimes these carvings and this graffiti can become historic graffiti. We have a similar carving in Cary. There's a cemetery. There's a headstone of a Revolutionary War veteran hidden in Cary, like hidden in a neighborhood. And somebody came and carved their name on the stone in the early 1900s when they were 15, put his name in it. We ended up looking up his name, and he became a veteran of, I think, World War II. And so we have his name just etched in time. A war veteran etching his name on the grave of a war veteran. Out here, let's see, here it is. You can see that this one was carved in the 1800s. Maybe 90, I'm not sure, maybe 1890. And you can see his name, it looks like F.W. Dick. And let's see, if I remember correctly from my notes, I believe he was the great-great-grandson of the person who built this. who helped build or design this church. So his name is there, and by looking up these names and these dates, you can actually find out the history of the people who came and put graffiti on the wall. Again, not something you should ever do, but sometimes there is a silver lining and you can find some history. There are carvings all over this, and there are bullet holes. So I'm going to show you the bullet holes. J.S. Williams. Some of these are actually very, very vivid. I believe, oh, this one was important too. Maybe C.D. Russet or Rosset. That's probably it. He was also kin to one of the important and prominent members who helped with the building of the church and of Brunswick Town. Now, Brunswick Town was burned down. In fact, it was burned twice and then kind of rebuilt and then burned again. And I was told that when they were coming to burn down the town, warning was sent ahead. They actually warned and told some of the people on their ship that they were going to be coming and doing terrible things to the town here. I don't even want to say the terrible things they said they would do to the women. And so there was a little bit of warning, and then they let them go. And then those people came here, and by the time, I think it was the British, but by the time they would have gotten here, Brunswick Town would have been evacuated. So there weren't people here when this was burned down. He also showed me that there's this green glassy gloss, and they've actually noticed that there is a pattern. Can you see it? So when this was in its full glory, this might not have just looked like a solid brick structure. You might have had a lot of little green glassy bricks, gloss over the bricks. So there's also, again, there's a cemetery here, and again, there are 12 graves buried inside the church. They do have weddings out here today, so you can actually have your wedding out here and events, but it's really just a nice place to come stroll. The pathway that goes through the remnants of the town goes down by the river, and it's really just a lovely walk. You've got the trees, they're huge and old with the hanging Spanish moss, and then you can see kind of the footprint of where the town was. People who are asking the location, this is Brunswick Town, which is, it's almost like a ghost town, but today it's a historic site because it was destroyed, and what's left of it, they are excavating slowly. When you asked him how much of the town he thinks he's excavated, and this includes the church and the fort, he believes they've only excavated about 5% of the town, that most of it is still underground. But they can take radar images under the ground and see, they can find what's under there, find remnants of houses and foundations and things like that. So they can sort of do that to try to find where they should excavate next. If you walk down that way, which it's quite a walk, so I don't believe we're going to do it today, but in the story there will be pictures, and I'm going to make a video showing you the ruins of the town proper. This is the church, but there is an entire town out there with ruins and footprints and wells. You've got stone foundations that are really well kept. So you can really get an idea of how this town was put together. If you look at this story, there's actually going to be a map that's going to show you what they think the town looked like based on what they have found. Now I want to show you this too. So you can see here, Brooke Hootie and the Blowfish recorded a music video of the ruins on Rockingham? That's really interesting. I would definitely like to check that out too. This is in North Carolina. It's close to Carolina Beach. This is an Anglican church, the Phillips Chapel Anglican Church. So right here you can see damage, and this is where soldiers, when they came into the area during the Civil War, they used this part of the church for shooting target practice. So you can still see the damage here, and yet the church still stands just as beautiful as it ever did. So this is absolutely a beautiful piece of history. I hadn't heard of it myself. You know, I know a lot about Raleigh history and the Triangle, but seeing that there was an entire abandoned church ruin and an entire ruin of a colonial town just standing out here, it's just amazing. Brooke, you're right. There's so much in North Carolina, if you know where to find it, that was burnt down by Sherman going through. And then you can find those ruins still standing, or maybe not still standing. So that is all we have time for today. So I'm going to flip around and talk to you again. That's all we have time for today. Keep an eye out for the story. The story is going to have pictures and video footage of the rest of the town, including all of the foundations and the fort and the earthworks and the cannon emplacements, all these places. David, it was built in, I believe it started being built in 1728, but we can take a quick look. It was the early to mid 1700s. But then these places were burned down prior to 1800, so there was pretty much a Revolutionary War, and this town played a very big role in the Revolutionary War. That'll be in the story. They actually had like a revolution about the Stamp Act, so way before the Boston Tea Party, revolutions like that were happening right here in Brunswick Town. Probably part of why it got burned down. It was a very, very important town during the Revolutionary War and leading up to the Revolutionary War. There is a lot of history in this area, so let's see. Okay, so it looks like the church was started in 1754, but the law was enacted in 1729, and it took years and years to build it. So we're talking like the 1750s, 1760s, and then it sounds like, I guess it didn't stand that long. Oh, most of the burials in the cemetery took place after the fire. That's interesting, I didn't realize that. And then here's what the church kind of would have looked like. So, again, this is what the story is going to be. We're going to have this coming up. It's most likely going to be tomorrow at this point, because I'm going to drive back into Raleigh before I can write the story, and it's getting kind of late. So keep an eye on the website tomorrow for this full story. It's going to have all of this history. The site manager here told me so many stories. There were things here that actually changed the course of history, that actually impacted the life of Abraham Lincoln, and really could have played a role in him being assassinated. And that was right here in Brunswick Town, this town that doesn't even exist anymore. So be sure to look for that story. I'm going to put pictures up, and keep an eye out next week and the week after. I've got some more hidden history coming up each weekend, so I look forward to sharing that with you too. And keep an eye out for the story. Thanks for exploring this with me. Definitely look for the article and all the pictures. There's a whole town out here, so I really want you to see the whole town, not just the church. So take a look at the story when it goes up. It'll go on the main page tomorrow, and I'll share it on Facebook. So take a look at that. And again, you can come out here and visit this yourself. It's beautiful. The salty air has been hitting me all day, and the trees are just gorgeous. It's a really nice walk. And there's a little museum, or not even a little museum, a museum inside the building there. So thank you guys so much, and I'll see you for more hidden history next week. Bye.